In this video, I'll show you how to edit raw photos in Affinity. Let's get started. If you'd like to follow along with me, I've left a download link to the photo that I'll be using in the video description. When you open a raw photo in Affinity, your workspace will look a little different from usual. That's because whenever you're editing a raw image, it will first open in the Develop Studio. So you can see we have a different set of tools and a different set of panels over here. Now, the first thing you do, the very first time you open a raw photo in Affinity, is you should come up to the top to click on this gear icon. Then go to where it says Tone Curve. By default, Affinity adds a tone curve to your raw images, which makes the photo look better from the start, but it also makes you lose a little bit of flexibility when editing it. So if your settings say Apply Tone Curve, go ahead and click on that and change it to Take No Action. Now we can close out of this, and to make sure that that setting is applied to this photo, we need to cancel this develop, click yes, then we can go ahead and reopen that photo. From now on, anytime you open a raw photo, it will not have a tone curve applied to it. That setting will be saved. You might notice now the photo looks a little bit different without that tone curve, but we're in full control of our image now. This is a much better way to work. Now that that's taken care of, let's begin adjusting this raw photo. First, over here, we have the exposure section, which lets us adjust the lighting. The first slider, the exposure slider, is very extreme. You can see as I raise this up, the highlights quickly become blown out. And if you watch the histogram as I adjust this, you can see that a lot of the information leaves the graph, meaning we're losing those details. And of course, as you lower it, your image will get a lot darker. Because this slider is so sensitive, I tried to only move it a little bit to brighten or darken my images, so I'm just going to bring this up just a little bit. So that didn't brighten it very much, so let's move down to the brightness slider. I like the brightness slider a little better because it tends to brighten more gradually. This is because the exposure slider will make every part of the photo brighter, while the brightness slider just brightens the midtones. So it won't harm the highlights as much as the exposure slider. I'll bring this one up quite a bit. To finish with this section, we have the black point slider, which adds more darkness to the shadows. I'll bring this up a little bit, and I think this looks pretty good. If you want to see what this looked like before, you can turn this whole section off to see the difference. So here's the before and the after. We already have a big improvement just adjusting the lighting. The next section is the Enhance section. We can use this to enhance the contrast and the colors. So first, we have the contrast slider, which adds more of a difference between the light and dark areas of your image. So as I raise this up, you can see her hair gets darker, and the light areas, like the highlight on her arm, gets even brighter. I'm just going to raise this a little bit. So another option you have for contrast is the clarity slider, which I don't really like using for people. The clarity slider adds edge contrast. So as I raise this up, you can see that every edge gets a lot sharper, making any wrinkles or lines on the face really stand out. I don't think this looks right, so I'll double click to reset this slider. Next, we have the saturation slider. Saturation makes all of the colors look a little bit more intense. I think pictures look nice when they have a little bit of saturation, so I'll just increase this a little bit. And then we'll move down to the vibrant slider. The vibrant slider is different because it increases the saturation of the muted colors in your image. So as I raise this up, you can see it's much more subtle than the saturation slider. I'll just bring this up a little like that. So far, the image looks really nice. I'll go to the top of the screen to these different view options so that you can see a few before and after views. First, we have this slider view. You can pull this back and forth to see the difference. We also have this side-by-side view. Or we could return to the normal view. So you can see we've already made a really big difference to this photo. Let's keep going with our edits. I'll scroll down and open up the white balance section. White balance allows you to adjust the temperature and the tint of your photo. I usually don't like adjusting these sliders at this point unless there's a really big issue with the photo. These sliders are really powerful, and it's easier to make small adjustments to the temperature and tint later on, so I'm just going to turn this section off, but I thought I would show that to you. Next, we have shadows and highlights. This is a very important section because it allows you to customize the lighting even more. First, we have the shadow slider, where we can make all of the shadows brighter or darker. This can really come in handy for recovering dark shadow areas like her hair. As I raise this up, you can see we're bringing detail back to those really dark areas. We also have the highlight slider, which I use quite a lot. A lot of times, after brightening the image with the first set of sliders, the highlights can become blown out. We can fix this issue by lowering the highlight slider. If you watch the highlight on her arm, you can really see this. These sliders bring back quite a bit of detail, so I think this section is really useful. With that, we're done with our sliders, so let's turn on one of these views so that we can see what this looks like before and after. You can see that we've taken a lot of the grayness away, and we've regained a lot of detail. This looks so good. So once you're happy with your image, you can go to the top of the screen to press Develop. Now we're brought to the Pixel Studio, where we can continue to edit the picture as much as we want. I have a few fine-tuning things that I want to do for this image. First, I want to add more brightness and contrast to the skin. So I'm going to go to our adjustments, and I'll apply a curves adjustment. To add this contrast, I'm going to make a little S curve. So I'll raise the highlights, and I'll lower the shadows. I think this looks really nice on her skin, but I don't like how it looks on the rest of the image. So because I only want this applied to the skin, I'm going to invert this layer with Command or Control I. Now we have a black mask, so I can use the paintbrush to paint in white paint to apply this to her skin. I'm just going to lower the hardness of my paintbrush so that I have a nice soft edge here, and I'll use the bracket keys on my keyboard to increase the size of my brush. So now I'll just paint this all over her skin. And I'll zoom out with Command or Control 0. Now you can see the before and after, adding contrast to the skin. I think this looks pretty good, but I want to adjust the colors a little bit. To do this, I'll go back to our adjustments, and I'll apply a color balance adjustment. Using this adjustment, we can adjust the colors of the shadows, midtones, and highlights. Let's start with the shadows. I like to make the shadows look a little bit more cool toned, So I'm going to lower the first slider to add some cyan, and I'll raise the last slider to add blue. Then I'll go to the midtone section. Here I'm going to raise the red slider to add more warmth. Then for the magenta green slider, I'll just move this side to side to see what looks better. I think I'll add just a little bit of magenta. And for the last slider, I'll just lower it to add a little bit of yellow. To finish, I'll just go to the highlights. And let's add just a little bit of red. And maybe a little bit of blue. Feel free to play around with the sliders to see the difference each one of these can make. I think this has made the colors look a lot better. Here's the before and after. I think her skin looks really nice. As one final tip, if you ever want to go back to the Develop Studio to make more adjustments, you can double-click on the photo's layer thumbnail. This is possible because up in the context toolbar, we have a setting right here that says that the raw layer is embedded. Because of that, we can come back into the studio at any time, so I think this is a great option. Alright, now you know how to edit raw photos in Affinity. If you enjoyed this video, I'll leave a link in the video description to my free Affinity course. In the course, you'll learn 10 simple steps to make any photo amazing. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next Affinity Revolution tutorial.